They've been around a very long time, 60 million years, much longer than their cousins the chimpanzees, gorillas, and even ourselves. These are ring-tailed lemurs, and they live only in the forests of Madagascar. Dr. Lisa Gould saw her first lemur 13 years ago and was instantly hooked. Now her field studies are shedding some light on an animal about which little was known, and like so many other primates, is fighting for its survival in an unforgiving world. Just south of the Tropic of Capricorn, on the island of Madagascar, Lisa Gould is on her way to work. The Beza Mafole Reserve has been the protected home of the ring-tailed lemurs since 1987. In this forest, there are 4 different species of lemurs. It's a sanctuary where these appealing animals can live relatively undisturbed, as well as being an ideal spot for Lisa to get to know them.
I've been studying the ring-tailed lemurs here at this particular reserve since 1992. And there are 8 or 9 groups that we have been following. Myself and my colleagues have been every couple of years coming here and capturing the lemurs, putting colored collars on them with different colored tags with numbers. And in this way we're able to track the population, find out who's died, who's leaving the reserve, who's coming in. We also keep track of births and infant mortality in any particular year. So we're actually finding out a lot of interesting information about these wonderful ring-tailed lemurs that live only in southern Madagascar. The ring-tailed lemurs just really captured my attention. I really found them delightful animals, beautiful animals, very interesting animals, and I decided that they would be great subjects to study because they're just fascinating creatures.
To Western eyes, Madagascar can be eerily strange. Since the island formed off the coast of Africa 100 million years ago, life has evolved in splendid isolation. Undisturbed, nature worked her wonders and took an unfamiliar path. What we see today is an extraordinary compendium of plants and animals like no other on Earth. But its best-known residents are the lemurs, members of the primates. Lemurs come in all shapes and sizes. Some look uncannily like Steven Spielberg's Gremlins, while others are small enough to fit in your back pocket. They're all basically vegetarian, but these mouse lemurs will also feed on insects. Sadly, many of the 32 species are in grave danger of becoming little more than footnotes in zoological textbooks. Since time immemorial, man has been fascinated by the primates. Yet lemurs have never enjoyed the same degree of adoration as the chimps or gorillas.
Lemurs are a lot smaller. They're little animals that roam around the forests of Madagascar. People perhaps don't identify with lemurs in the same way that they identify with great apes or with monkeys. So perhaps there isn't as much interest, although once people start finding out about lemurs, they're fascinated. There was a bias for years and years that, oh, who's interested in lemurs? They're just nocturnal. Well, no, there are a lot of species, and some are nocturnal and some are active during the daytime, and their social relationships are just as complex as those found in any baboon society or any chimpanzee society. Just like chimpanzees and baboons and many other primates, lemurs live in family groups, and they also have friends, and they make new friends, and they lose friends, and they have their kin around them, just like we do.
Ring-tailed lemurs live in small groups, related to each other through the females. The family offers protection, they keep each other warm, and together they'll defend their territory against intruders. In the lemur's matriarchal society, it's the females who wear the pants.
Female dominance in ring-tailed lemurs means that the females have priority over all of the resources such as food and water, best resting places like that. They also have social dominance over males, which means if a male is sitting in a particular place in a tree that the female wants to sit in, she can just go to the male and displace him, either give him a smack across the head, or often her presence there, he will get up and leave.
For a male lemur intent on social climbing, it's a matter of finding an influential friend.
A very good thing for a male to do that I discovered in my year-long study in 1992 is it's helpful for a male to become friends with a female. And if they do that, and if the female accepts him, then he has a better chance, perhaps, of mating with her. He also has a better chance of spending time in the center of the group. And this is helpful. It gives him better protection against predators. Much better to be in the center of a group with a number of animals than to be out on the periphery where you're all alone.
Lemur society is just like any other, and male rivalry is common. They wipe their tails on their scent glands and wave it in their rival's face, a sort of ultimate insult. Battle may ensue. But Lisa was puzzled to find that what the males considered aggressive and insulting behavior would have a very different interpretation by the females of the group. It seems that when it comes to fancying a member of the opposite sex, they do the same thing. It's the lemur equivalent of, let's have a drink sometime. If it's the mating season, and if Her Majesty's in the mood, then she'll lead her suitor a merry dance through the bushes in the time-honoured fashion. Among mammals, they say that females ruling the roost is quite rare. But true or false, why should it happen to lemurs?
The most accepted reason why ring-tailed lemurs and other lemur species are female dominant are that in these species, the females all give birth at the same time. And it's during the dry season, so there's a lot of competition for food. So in order for infants to survive, females must have first priority of food for this particular window of time. And then the rainy season begins when infants begin feeding on solid foods themselves. So this is the way their social system and their mating system has evolved.
Another puzzle that Lisa is trying to solve is how social rank in the lemur group is passed on from one generation to the next.
The two females that are grooming each other back here are, we call them Yin Yang and Bluebell. And Yin Yang's the top-ranking female in green group, Bluebell's the second-ranking female. Yin Yang has been the top-ranking female in this group since about 1991, and before that her mother was the top-ranking female. Her mother died and she took over. So we're now getting the idea that maybe high-ranking females or alpha female status is inherited, mother to daughter.
So the class system, it seems, is still alive and kicking in the ring-tailed lemur society of Madagascar, an intricate web of relationships with such complexity and intrigue it's the equal of any TV soap opera. Although Madagascar lies in the tropics, the ring-tailed lemur still finds the winter a little hard to take.
Lemurs like to stay warm. It's actually very important for them to be warm. And in the winter, we're now in the winter in southern Madagascar, the mornings are very cold, and so it's necessary for them to warm up. And so they do what we call sunning behavior, where they sit facing the sun and put their arms up like this.
This is a typical winter's day for lemurs, waiting for the sun to come up and warm their bones.
Although it seems pretty hot to us, it's actually quite cold to the lemurs. So they spend a lot of their time at this time of year huddled together with their tails over each other's shoulders. Now, right in the middle of that particular lemur ball is the alpha female, or the top-ranking female in the group. And depending on their rank, she's got several juveniles and adolescent animals surrounding her. And it's the juveniles of the higher-ranking females that get to do this. Everyone ideally wants to be with the alpha female in a lemur ball, but they don't all get to do it.
Humans socialize with a drink. Lemurs are happy with a good communal wash and brush up.
Grooming is very important for all primates, and with ring-tailed lemurs, because they're very social animals. First of all, it enhances social bonds. Grooming is a gesture of friendship.
But it's more than just that. Grooming removes dead skin and parasites from the lemur's coat, and their teeth are specially adapted to serve as combs.
I don't think it's really anthropomorphic to say that they're enjoying it. It's a really important part of their life. They groom with their arms around each other. They sit in huddles. One of the ways that they greet each other is by licking each other's muzzles a little bit, which you could almost say is kissing. So there really is certain, what we call affiliative behaviors, friendly, affectionate sorts of behaviors.
How well lemurs get on with one another and how far they range is largely determined by the availability of food.
Well, the lemurs here are eating tamarin pods. They are actually the primary food source, or one of the primary food sources of ring-tailed lemurs. They prefer the ripe pods that are just hanging on the tree. They will eat pods on the ground, but not very often, only if they've just fallen on the ground. So they're pretty selective in their tamarin feeding. Of course, the females get first choice of the best tamarin pods, and then the males sort of have to make do with what's left over.
Because most of the year the lemur's food is relatively abundant at Beza, ring-tailed lemurs aren't as territorial as some other primates. But sometimes they do stake a claim and leave an interesting calling card.
The males have a spur that grows out of their wrist, and right beside this spur is a scent gland, and they mark the trees with this spur. They can actually gouge the bark of the tree with the spur and also spread a sort of musk-like substance from the scent gland. So in this way they are, in a sense, marking territory, but they don't have very strict territories. They do share with other animals. What this scent marking does, though, is let the other animals know when this particular group was there last.
For the lemurs, the reserve at Beza provides a fairly stable food supply. Lemurs lucky enough to live here can thrive.
In certain areas, it's actually very lush. There is, at certain times of the year, a lot of food for the lemurs. They don't really have to range very far like lemurs outside the reserve, which would have to move a lot further to find food. And they seem to be fairly long-lived. We're not sure how long exactly, but we come back year after year and we often find the same lemurs in the groups, so they seem to be doing quite well.
To get inside the lemur's world and to better understand it, Lisa records their behavior in minute detail.
There are a number of different kinds of data collection methods that I use. I have a chronometer on my watch and I start it at 0 and I follow an animal for a particular length of time, maybe 15 minutes or half an hour. And every time they change their behavior, I record the time that they change their behavior and what they are doing. So it's pretty intensive, and those of us who use this kind of data collection method often get headaches after a few hours. But what it does is it gives us an absolute picture of what's going on with that animal in that particular time period.
Lisa's scientific research with the lemurs in Madagascar involves long stretches of field study far from home. But she's not complaining. Her life here has opened up whole new horizons.
Doing this work here on the other side of the world, it's another life for me. It's a whole different life. It's a great contrast to, say, academic work that I do or dealing with Edmonton winters. I put on a different hat. I come here and it's certainly rewarding in a number of ways.
2 5 months.
Madagascar draws scientists from all over the world. But the lemur research community is very small and there's not a lot of opportunity to compare notes. So Lisa's always pleased to get a chance to talk shop when fellow researcher Diane Brockman hits town.
Well, this is really interesting because it's the opposite of the ring-tailed lemurs. You've got many more groups over in the west, and with ring-tailed lemurs there are only 2 or 3, and they've got a huge range which goes all across here, and then there are a whole bunch of groups right along the river that are kind of all squeezed in.
Coming to terms with living in such a remote region, the poverty and the never-ending struggle for survival takes a little getting used to.
Southern Madagascar is not a very easy place to live in. It's the poorest area in Madagascar. It's the hottest and the driest. In the south here, there's not a lot of food. There's been certainly problems at times with not being able to get enough food and being somewhat malnourished. It's also, the reserve here, Beza-Mafali Reserve, is extremely isolated. We are 200 kilometers from the nearest town that has a hospital, a post office, any sort of amenities like that, and very, very rough terrain. I won't even say roads. They're not roads that lead to Beza.
Life at Beza can be pretty solitary. After a while, it's not hard to feel cut off from any sort of civilization and desperate for news of the outside world. While the ring-tailed lemurs in the reserve live a relatively charmed life, the same cannot be said for those in the rest of Madagascar.
In the past, this entire region was covered in the kind of deciduous riverine forest that you see in the reserve today. But subsistence agriculture has replaced much of the forest, much of the lemur habitat. And so all that is left are small patches of forest, like the Beza-Mafali Reserve. And therefore, conservation efforts are really important in terms of preserving the kind of habitat that's absolutely necessary for lemurs and all the other species that live in southern Madagascar to exist.
Without doubt, the country is one of the world's most critical conservation hotspots. While these juveniles play at the Beza Special Reserve, they're unaware that their species could well be fighting for its very survival. Man really has done his best to make his not-so-pretty mark on the island of Madagascar. It's an environmental tragedy. 4/5 of the forest is no more, chopped down, burnt to clear the land, or made into charcoal for fuel.
The degradation of the forests primarily have to do with people being very poor and just trying to grow a little bit of food for their family or grow enough food to take to market to sell. So it's all subsistence farming. Also in the south here, a lot of people own cattle. It is a cattle culture.
Trying to change the way these rural communities tick and make them more aware of conservation could take years. Education is the key, and the more local people are involved, the more successful the process will be. There are some encouraging signs. Malagasy researchers are compiling an inventory of all the plants and animals in the reserve, and even the families that live at Beza are getting the spirit, singing the praises of nature. Madagascar's government is taking the conservation efforts seriously. A new school is a reward for not cutting down trees in the reserve. A new village well at least will help to make the parched earth more productive, and hopefully stave off the need to destroy more forest. But it's always a trade-off.
It just simply does not work for outside groups to come in and tell people not to use a particular part of the land, particularly in countries like Madagascar where people are desperately poor. So really the only way that any kind of conservation efforts are going to work is with the cooperation of the local people.
When human beings first arrived on this tropical island a mere 2,000 years ago, there were few predators hounding the lemurs. But in that short time, we've managed to kill off 15 entire species.
There's no easy answer to protecting the biodiversity of the island. There are a lot of conflicts, of course. There's an expanding population, expanding very rapidly. Not enough land. They can't afford to conserve. So with the external money coming in and the cooperation of local people working with Western conservation organizations, that's about the best that can be hoped for.
Making the world aware of the lemur's plight is an uphill struggle. For future generations, though, it's critical. No one knows the real cost to humanity of losing a species. But if piece by piece, square by square, we cut up nature's patchwork quilt, sooner or later, there will be so many holes that it will just fall apart. The lemur is worth fighting for.